261.
We are ready to move immediately move to make about 20,000 pharmacy sites across the country ready to vaccinate those adolescents as soon as the FDA makes its
Assemblywoman Anderson, it's good to have you here today.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be here. My name is Natha Anderson, and it is my honor and pleasure to be a school teacher in my real life. But today I am here representing Assembly District 30. Assembly District 30 is mostly Sparks, a little bit of Reno. I personally call it the heart of the Truckee Meadows. Assembly Bill 261 is inspired by two different items. The first is a philosophy that I can remember learning when it was time for me to go to the College of Education. And it was probably one of the first textbooks that I had the opportunity to read. And I have a feeling that other educators on this committee, as well as anybody that's ever taken a class that has to do with English, has probably been introduced to choosing and using books for the classroom, which was published in 1990. This philosophy basically states that when there are enough books available, they can act as both a mirror and window for all of our children. They will see that we can celebrate both our differences and our similarities, because together they are what makes us all human. As an English teacher, this is something that I've always attempted to utilize in my classroom. I want the books that we get a chance to read as a whole class to be both a mirror, reflecting where my students are from, but also sometimes a window into a different culture and community for them. And this belief is embraced by many, including the Department of Education and many of our school districts who already utilize this practice when choosing textbooks and or other district-wide and or statewide adopted materials. It is not, however, set specifically in law, and that's one reason why I'm bringing this forward. The second inspiration is actually, for me, a little bit more important. It's coming from students. These students are individuals who have either graduated in the last year, so they will never have the benefit of this law, unless they have children themselves, or they are in the process of getting ready to graduate. The two different groups that I worked with, one out of Clark County was the Las Vegas Youth Power Project. The other was the Washoe High Students for Change, which is out of Washoe County. Their statements are difficult to hear at times. It was very hard for me every once in a while to sit during our school board of trustees meetings when they were bringing up things that had not been taught and should have been. And yet it's an important element for us to remember that their voice is incredibly important in the room. And I greatly appreciate the fact that they are willing to take a chance. With Chair Dennis's permission, if I may, I usually would wait till the end to ask one of our students to actually present. However, Magdalena Mia Albright, is a junior in Washoe County. She's supposed to be taking a trig test that I believe starts at 2:15. So if you're okay if I have her speak first, so I know that she's gonna kick butt on this next test, but this way she can get this out of the way. If you're okay with that.
Yes, that'd be good.
Thank you.
Please.
So I believe Mia is calling in from Zoom. If you would like to go from here, it's my honor or my pleasure to introduce one of our future leaders, a junior of Reno High School, Mia Albright. If you would like to tell your story, Mia.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman Anderson and Mr. Chair. My name is Mia Albright, MIA-ALBRIGHT, and I'm a junior at Reno High School. I'm biracial, half white and half Hispanic. I'm also the daughter of an immigrant, my mom, who, along with her family, fled war in Nicaragua and grew up in Los Angeles, California. Growing up in the Washoe County School District in Reno, Nevada, taught me nothing about Central America and left me with serious questions about my identity and my culture. A lack of coverage of people of color in curriculum and textbooks had me fervently wishing to only be white. All I wanted in elementary and middle school was to fit in better with my peers at my predominantly white schools. Missing Latinx perspectives also had me forming flawed, racist ideas about what an American is supposed to look like. I used to cringe when my abuela spoke Spanish to me at a grocery store, ashamed and embarrassed in my own family. I considered myself better than other Hispanic students who struggled with speaking English because it wasn't their first language. No student should feel the way I felt, ostracized and alone, and no student should formulate or fall victim to those racist ideologies the way that I did. Including multiple perspectives in textbooks would mitigate or even eliminate those issues that I faced. It would teach empathy and respect for others. It would create a safer, more engaging school environment for all students, whether they are Black, Indigenous, Hispanic, Asian, or white. It would be a significant step in creating schools that work for and represent all of its students. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to speak first. Good luck on the test. So when I initially started this discussion in August, I began by considering, I looked at Oregon, which has a similar legislation, as well as Illinois, which again has similar legislation, And I also had thought initially of having it by a certain date. However, we have to be realistic about our budget concerns, but we also have to be realistic about the textbook industry itself. It is also trying as hard as possible to make sure to include as many different cultures as they can. But it is a little bit behind, so we have to make sure to give that time for them to be able to do so. I can really see this actually, if you get a chance to do some great research. It's out of University of Wisconsin in Madison. They actually go through every children's book that is published for a year, and they actually track the diversity in those children's books. From the 2018 data, 1% are American Indian or First Nation, 5% are Latino or Latina, 7% Asian Pacific Islander, 10% African American, 27% are animals, are the main characters, 50% are white. That is not a reflection of our students. It's too important for us to start teaching how each person's culture and each person's background and each person's abuela is important, and how even in first or second grade, we need to be getting that curriculum that reflects them, and as well as being a window into a different world. The other item that you'll notice is there's some information about from GLSEN. From the 2019 state snapshot, only 15% of the students that were surveyed felt that they were taught positive representation of LGBTQ people, the history or the events. This is all an important part of our history. This is all an important part of our culture. We need to be more inclusive. Although I have many other stats that I could easily bring forward, instead I would just like to quickly go over the details of this short bill. The first, it would review the standards in social studies, humanities, and science. The humanities would be both arts as well as English literature. That review would be through the similar process that is usually done, which is where the whole state reviews those standards. It's not asking for a special time frame. It is to make sure that the different communities are accurately represented and the information is age appropriate. The word age is rarely used in our NACs or our regulations. And so this is bringing in the word age for a reason. This review would again go through the current schedule. I'm not asking for this to be reviewed beyond the current scheduled time, because we have different time frames when you review those items. I do believe there was a little bit of a misunderstanding, which created concerns around the funding. You'll notice that there are some funding items on there. I've cleared it up with Clark County School District. They have removed their fiscal note, and I've been working with Mrs. Przynski, who will be working with the other school districts to continue to address this. I also wanted to clarify, this is not mandating a specific textbook or district-wide instructional materials to be adopted. I believe that there is some confusion. I've received 2 emails about some confusion. One of the current large school districts is currently reviewing a textbook. It's always good to see you, Dr. Hardy. As I was saying though, one of the larger school districts is currently reviewing a social studies change. And so I think those 2 things have become braided together, and there are some concerns from some individuals who are trying to bring up those 2 items together. The second item that it's being asked to do is when considering textbook and instructional curriculum, which is adopted state or county-wide, again, the communities must be accurately portrayed. So it's reviewing of the standards and then making sure that it's accurately portrayed in the textbooks and instructional materials. It is not making sure that every single community listed, that it has both Basque as well as African American, as well as American Native Indian, as well as Latino in every single textbook. Instead, it is where it's appropriate and making sure, again, that it is age appropriate. I have firsthand experience, as I mentioned before, when I've had the opportunity to teach titles or experiences which connect with my students. When I bring in Bless Me Ultima by Rodolfo Año, or the modern poetry of Joy Horjo, or the Other Westmore, which is, by the way, a great nonfiction book by Westmore, my students were seeing themselves. They were also able to experience different items. I could go into Farewell to Manzanar as well, an item that too often we do not consider how close we are to internment camps. Again, I could go on, however, I realize your time is precious. In closing, I would like to quote from the Nevada AAPI Legislative Caucus history, which was delivered today to many of us when we received our masks as well. The celebration of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month states, through immigration in times of war, they, the AAPI community, struggle to find harmony between their own culture and building a new identity here. Their lives and journeys show all of us what it means to truly be an American. What better way to celebrate this than in our standards for education, as well as the textbooks and instructional materials that we adopt. Thank you so much. I'm more than happy to take any sort of questions.
Questions? Senator Don Darrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Assemblywoman. I know that you said that you're looking for to work with book companies. I'm wondering how this particular bill differs from a regular book RFP that is put out, that we put social study teachers or English teachers or whoever they are that are picking the book to review those books and make sure that they have the proper information in them. So how is this different from that process?
Thank you, Senator Dondera-Loop. Through Chair Dennis to you, Assemblymember Anderson. I'm not well, the first thing is, I do not know, because I've worked with the Department of Education on this more than anything else. And so this was something where they would continue to review those items. The other reason why, though, I'm bringing it forward is because it's one more state to again show that this is a necessary thing. We currently have it in Oregon, Illinois, I believe Texas is in the process of reviewing similar, as well as California. So then if it's on the actual laws and the books, then it's something for textbooks companies to take seriously, which again, I believe they have been for some time. I do believe there's somebody from the Department of Education that might be able to explain that a little bit better. However, if Dr. Moore is there, I believe, or another individual, I believe I was supposed to have somebody else as well from Department of Education. If, however, they're not here, I see her now. I think that somebody from Department of Education probably would be able to explain that a little bit better.
Would you like for them to, would you like to be able to ask questions of the department?
Can I go ahead and let Mr. Brandkamp answer, and then I'll go on with my questions.
Okay. So if you would answer, I don't know if you heard the question. Do you need it restated?
Chair Dennis, with Dave Brandkamp for the record from the Department of Education. I did hear the question. So the current instructional materials that come through, we would just add this specific language to the RFI so that the vendors are aware of what we would be looking for. From the department's perspective, the first piece that is checked is the alignment to the standards, and then the second would be for equity and access, which would be under.
Mr. President, is this
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I, as always, know just enough to be dangerous here. As I used to work in part of this business. And I know that some of my concerns, while I really appreciate the bill and like it, my concerns are, as usual, we are limiting, who we list there. And, some of these may be more prevalent in other areas, right? And so, the other thing is I want to make sure that, when we have teachers looking for specific curriculum material, that they are, choosing and approving exactly what they need, because I think the teachers should have the ultimate voice in what they use. And so that's really important to me. And I also know, just from a previous life, that I know that it is not uncommon for a book company to insert a chapter within a book, or create a book for any given school district based on that purchase. So I don't know if there's a question in there, but I'm sure you, being the English teacher that you are, you can jump in there and tell me what I need to know. Thank you.
Through Senator Dennis to Senator Dondero Loop, Assemblymember Anderson, thank you. I do not have the answer, but I do have some personal experiences. When it comes to, for example, I do believe under 1.1D, we utilized Basque. Basque culture is not exactly studied often. And yet, how important is it that we have a chapter from Sweet Promised Land by Laxalt at some point? And so when you said that, that's the first thing I thought of was, I know, going through an English textbook adoption committee, I think it was 15 years ago, in Washoe County, that actually was added to one area, because we were like, well, where's this? And so it was the ability then to utilize these very specific individuals that we want to make sure are present. Because again, Basque culture is not exactly something that you're going to see outside of Nevada often. But it's that sort of ability to have the conversations that allows us to not only recognize the differences in our history and in our culture and in our literature, but also work with textbooks and work with the standards that are necessary to be able to do that. So I'm so happy that you brought that up. The most important thing, though, I 100%, 1000% agree with you, should be the educators to make that decision. So this is only when it's curriculum that is being, a textbook that is universally adopted at a district level that should go, or a state level, that should go through the process of being reviewed to make sure that it is in fact what is necessary. This is not, or even, and I can pick it up right now for you. Again, as I said, English is my world, and so I have my list of supplemental titles that I can bring in. It's a lengthy list. It is my choice, though, as to which book to utilize. However, this list is reviewed by a very large group in Washoe County of middle school and high school teachers to make that decision. Yes, this is approved. Yes, or no, it's not. And so it simply gives more tools in the toolbox. So for those of you playing along for cliche bingo and education, you can mark that one off on your bingo card today. But that is just one more element for us to be able to utilize. And I really appreciate that question, Beto.
Other questions? Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. And like my colleague, Vice Chair Marilyn Dondero Loop, I do believe in autonomy of teachers, of schools, that they do have the choice to teach what they want to in their schools, in their classrooms, in their systems. So I do wonder also about the cost to individual districts, and then who also decides what's age appropriate.
Thank you, Senator Buck. Through Senator Dennis to Senator Buck. Assemblymember Anderson, the cost, it would be through the similar process. I'm not asking for there to be a special process. So you'll notice that there are currently some funding notes, and I'm working with Mary Pruczynski to, again, try to address that for our smaller counties and everything. But it would be the similar cost that usually happens when it comes to a textbook adoption or curriculum adoption. This is not a specialized cost. And so usually there is it would be whatever the current process is, whether it's done through the county or through the state, a combination of the two. Because you should have training. It should not just be, here's a book, let me run away the other way, which unfortunately, I'm looking at a few of us who have been in education. We have had those fun professional developments in that fashion. That is not the purpose of it. The second item of the decision of the age appropriate, and I think that really is an important area to discuss, because as I said before, we've got one district that right now actually is reviewing the social studies textbook possibilities. That's exactly what the school board decision will be made. Is this age appropriate based upon the community input, based upon the Department of Education's input, based upon the pedagogical as well as grade idea? You know, and so those are those sort of items. It's not that you're going to have something. I'm so sorry I keep on using English, but again, it's my world. Nevada writer Ellen Hopkins is a great writer. She's from the Nevada area, but some of her books are a little bit more adult. You're not going to have Crank or some of the others that in a fourth grade class, in a third grade class. That sort of item is what would be actually the decision at truly the school board level, as well as at the Department of Education level when they're reviewing. So again, using the list that I have in front of me, we actually do have the recommended level that it should be, whether it's high school, middle school, etc.
Other questions? Let me ask one just clarifying question. So is there anything in this bill that mandates that they have to change their textbooks, what they currently have?
And thank you for that question, Senator Dennis. No. Assemblymember Anderson, sorry. No, there are not. This would again go through the similar process. Unfortunately, it's been some time since we've had new textbooks being adopted in some of our districts. I believe Clark County is one of them. If I remember correctly, President Obama is an up-and-coming senator in the current social studies textbook. So no, it is not, unfortunately. The main reason why was because of the budget crunch that we're under at this time. Then also, we have to be realistic with how much work it does take to review the textbooks as well as the instructional materials. So that sort of item is why. And then I think Senator Dondero Loop might have more to add as well.
Just a clarifying question. So this would just add additional criteria when they go to buy new textbooks. Is that correct?
Senator Dennis, Assemblymember Anderson, that is correct.
Okay. Yeah.
And I also please apologize to Senator Buck. I forgot to thank you for the question.
Senator Dondero.
Yes, thank you. Just to add on to the whole, there aren't new textbooks. So I believe, and Mr. Brandkamp might be able to tell me this, but if my memory serves me correctly, there's a 7-year cycle on book adoptions, which means, you know, with the 2 downturns that we've had in the last 10 years, I understand that there have been some delays and some adoptions, but there's a 7-year cycle, and within that 7-year cycle, there's also a 4-year catch-up piece. So if you have just bought a new book, for example, and it's time for them to review a book and purchase, then you have 4 years to move into that new book. So with that being said, while I appreciate that, there may be other reasons that we don't have new textbooks. It would not be pursuant with these NRSs. I do not believe. Mr. Brandkamp, if you could correct me if I'm wrong.
Mr. Brandkamp?
Senator Dondero. Sorry, Senator Dennis. Senator Dondero, Senator Dennis. Dave Brandkamp for the Department of Education. The textbook adoption process that you were describing is correct in the sense of a cycle. However, anytime if the standards were changed, for example, when we brought in the next generation science standards, then that timeline that you were describing, there's a major change in standards across the entire country. It takes a while for our textbook companies to catch up. So we often will extend our review until we know we have material to report. So that would be the one adjustment to what you described. What we do is put a list on the state board website that these are the textbooks that have been approved by the Department of Education, and then as districts have the funding or the availability to them, they do an additional review and then make a selection from that list.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? I'm not seeing any other questions at this time, so we will go then to, you don't have any other presentations, right?
I actually do have my intern who is actually in the room today.
Okay, well then, they'll come forward.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Whenever you're ready, make sure you press the button and identify yourself for the record.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me. For the record, my name is Nathan Noble, Nathan Noble. I'm currently a freshman at the University of Nevada, Reno, and I'm also an intern for Assemblywoman Anderson. But today, I want to speak to you only on behalf of myself, my own experiences, and my own life. I am also a proud product of the Washoe County School District. And, you know, looking back on my education, I've gained a bit of a new perspective. An education that recently ended when I, like the rest of my peers, was sent into quarantine in early 2020. In quarantine, I had a lot of time to do nothing. And so, I binged HBO's Watchmen. The first scene in that show depicts the Tulsa Massacre. As depicted, it was brutal, horrific, and violent. And also the first time I had ever heard about that. There are so many things like that that I'd never even been exposed to. I was never taught about Charles Hamilton Houston, or about Cesar Chavez, or Chief Red Horse, or Japanese internment. Now, the point is not about any of these ones individually, but that together they form an incomplete view of the past. Now, it's at this point that I should mention this is not the fault of Nevada's teachers. On the contrary, all of my teachers were fantastic. But it is still a problem nonetheless. It doesn't come from a character flaw of the students. Some of the brightest and most curious of my peers were still completely blindsided by this. It's not even about what's in the textbooks. It's about what isn't there. I believe we can do better. This brings me to AB261. Personally, I like it because of its flexibility, universal applicability, and innovative solution to the problem of financing. But most of all, I like that this bill is built around the core beliefs that the diversity of our state must be reflected in the material we teach to our students, and that a multiplicity of perspectives is essential for true learning. This bill, for me, is a no-brainer. It costs nothing, both fiscally and morally. And chief amongst its innumerable benefits, it provides recognition for a whole new generation of Nevadans who will for the first time get to see themselves reflected in our common history. After all, how can we expect students to succeed and navigate the challenges of life if we do not prepare them for the diversity of our modern world? If we expect high performance, we must set high standards. And, as any homeowner can tell you, a strong house must have a strong foundation. Similarly, real success must be built on real understanding. For these reasons that I urge you in the strongest possible terms to support AB 261. Not for me or any of the people who will be graduating, but for the people who come next, for the next generation of students. There is no knowledge. There is no middle ground between ignorance and truth. There is no compromise between knowledge and a lack thereof. And today, committee members, you must choose which side our state will stand on. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I yield my time.
Thank you very much. All right. Any questions? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. so we're ready to go on to those that wish to give testimony and support. So we'll go to those wishing to give testimony and support. Anyone here in the room, if you'll come forward. We do have someone here, so we'll do these first, and then we'll go to online.
Mr. Chair, committee members, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSCA supports AB261 to provide diversity and inclusivity in the academic standards and curriculum. NSCA has had a standing position in support of diversity in education materials since 1978, with a resolution adopted at our member delegate assembly that year. This position was affirmed and expanded in 1990 and 2002. It reads, the Nevada State Education Association believes that educational materials, textbooks, reference materials, audiovisual material, and supplementary reading in all subjects should portray our cultural diversity and the achievements of minority groups and women. NSCA supports continued firm stands by the Department of Education Textbook Commission and local school districts to test and adapt curricular content, which recognizes the contributions to society of minority, ethnic, and cultural diversity. NSCA also supports the development of attitudes in Nevada youth, which further these beliefs. It's not 1978. It's long past time for Nevada to pass a law to ensure diversity and inclusivity in our curriculum and instructional materials. Educators know when curriculum and materials include diverse points of view, it not only helps empathy and understanding, but it also gives students from a diversity of backgrounds representation and a voice. That is why educators across the state and country have renewed their focus on developing culturally responsible classrooms, oftentimes spending out of pocket to supplement old instructional materials that are out of date and provide a limited perspective. We would like to acknowledge Natha Anderson, a classroom teacher, past president of the Washoe Education Association, and now assembly member, for listening to educators and bringing this important and timely legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
We have another one here. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Lindsay Anderson on behalf of the Washoe County School District here today in support of this legislation. We appreciate Assemblywoman Anderson working with many students from Washoe County. You may have heard that we recently adopted an anti-racism policy, and our action steps include making sure that our materials are in line with that policy. I think Mr. Brankamp said it the best. The most important thing in terms of adopting textbooks for a district is alignment with the standards. And so if there is information included in the standards, we certainly want our textbooks to reflect that. And we do think it's very important to have as many textbook vendors as we can apply. That helps us have better options and have our committees that do go through an extensive process be able to pick the best possible option. And so we think this could lend support in that area. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to give, you'll come forward. And if there's anybody else that wants to, you can take the other seat there.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Erica Mosca, M-O-S-C-A. I'm the founder and executive director of Leaders in Training. We support students to be the very first person in their family to graduate from college and support them to become leaders of their own community in East Las Vegas. I was really excited to fly up here today in honor of AAPI Day, as well as to represent voices of students who want to see themselves represented in the curriculum. I'm a former CCSD teacher, have a master's degree in education from both UNLV as well as Harvard's Graduate School of Education, and worked in the superintendent's office. I now work with students in a grassroots way because we knew in the district we were not able to share their identities and what made them proud in our own curriculum, so we started a nonprofit to do it that way. And today I'm just coming up to share a quote from a student to make sure that we have student voice on this. It wasn't until middle school that I personally started to think of myself differently, with little to no guidance or explanation from teachers of what I may be going through. Despite what many may think of as a small change in the curriculum, the addition of our history is one that will likely improve students' well-being, not just inside the classroom, but outside as well. I'm a senior in high school, which means that I will not be able to experience this course for myself. However, I want future generations of students to learn of their history, even if I cannot, because every student deserves the chance to be acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to give testimony and support here in the room? If not, let's go online. If you would queue up the first person in support.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in support on AB261, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
With new daily cases topping 400,000 and a population of 1.4 billion, India faces shortages of everything from hospital beds for COVID patients to crematoriums for the victims.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 433, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Hello, Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Amber Falgo. That is spelled AMBERFALGOUT, and I am the Northern Nevada Manager for Battleborn Progress. I personally want to thank you for your time. We are in full support of Assembly Bill 261, and we thank Assemblywoman Anderson for bringing this bill forward. We believe that diversity in curriculum is a core part of a student's growth. Making sure that textbooks represent the cultural diversity of our state and our nation is crucial. Making sure our students see a diverse and inclusive curriculum is proven to teach them empathy and understanding. Our history is diverse, and this should be represented within the curriculum that our students see. We urge the committee to support this bill. Thank you again.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 428, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Cases every day, 300,000 to 400,000 breaking new records. This virus.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 428, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
And our hearts go out to those people who are suffering, and the U.S. is doing everything they can to send ventilators and oxygen.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 428, we see that you are unmuted and you may proceed.
Oh, I do apologize. I calling from a different number, so I didn't recognize the number. This is Chris Davin, the Executive Director of Henderson Equality Center and Equality Nevada. I want to say that we are in support of this bill. We do ask that some revisions do go into play. We would like to see how AB 261 can be combined together with Senate Bill 194, which goes over the civics and implementation of adding the Pacific Islander Americans, Latino Americans, Middle Eastern Americans, women, persons with disability, immigrants or refugees, and persons who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning, which is covered in Senate Bill 194 under Section NRS 389.525, Section 2A, which was introduced just shortly in March by Roberta Lang. Currently, 5 states have the revisions of this textbook implementation, which are California, Illinois, New Jersey, Colorado, and Oregon. Nevada would be the 6th state to include these teachings in various backgrounds in the history and civics classes in schools throughout our state. We would like to see that an option of various textbooks can be provided to the school districts so they can choose which version that would best suit for their school area. Right now, only 15% were taught positive representation of LGBTQ people for history or events in inclusive curriculum throughout the United States. Our students today need to be taught about this in history, that they have made something memorable, and that their ancestors are being recognized. We ask that you look at Senate Bill 194 and Assembly Bill 261 and put the bills together to make a more robust initiative in diversity, equality, and representation. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 517, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin. Once again, caller with the last 3 digits, 517, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Rico Ocampo, spelled Ricocampo. Good evening, Committee Chair and members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Rico Campo. I am the Executive Director for Anytown Las Vegas, the longest running anti-racism youth program in Nevada. I'm also an organizer with Make the Road Nevada, and I also have the privilege of being the advisor for the Youth Power Project, a member-led organization that builds the power of Latinx and working class communities of color to achieve dignity and justice through organizing, policy innovation, and transformative education. I represent hundreds of members across Southern Nevada, and today I have the privilege of testifying in support of AB 261. On behalf of our membership, we would like to personally thank Assemblywoman Anderson, Assemblywoman Miller, Assemblywoman Considine, and Senator Harris for sponsoring AB 261. In addition, we stand in solidarity with the Washoe County Students for Change for supporting this bill. We have a fundamental belief that diversity should not be seen as an add-on, but rather should be described as a continuum. A school curriculum that incorporates diversity, enhances learning and research, and deepens in-class discussions. Schools must ensure diversity exists on every level by ensuring diverse enrollment, training, and crucially implementing curricula that reflects the history and culture of students of all backgrounds. We believe that equitable education reform must be invested in diversifying not only classrooms, but lessons plans as well. Stereotypes about which racial groups can and cannot succeed academically have become pervasive in American classrooms. We know that a large growing body of research has demonstrated how teacher expectations can reinforce the notion that white and Asian students will outperform their Black and Hispanic counterparts. And in fact, the American Psychological Association has found that this kind of stereotyping can widen the achievement gap by creating a stereotype threat, a self-enforcing stigma for students who believe they are inferior in academics. Stereotype threat can raise inhibiting doubts and high-pressure anxieties, according to the American Psychological Association. We believe that equity cannot be separated from excellence and current efforts to improve the quality of learning in schools. Beneath the surface of standard-based reforms is the question of whether the American dream truly belongs to all students, and whether American society is morally committed to an equal and diverse educational opportunity. And just like my son, just like Mia, my son is biracial as well. And next week, my wife and I will be celebrating his 6th birthday. My hope is that he will learn the incredible accomplishments of people from his Mexican heritage. My hope is that he will learn the remarkable contributions made by other racial groups. While having conversations about fiscal notes and policies is critical with any legislation, my hope is that the conversation about AB 261 remains focused on how we can advance a better Nevada through diversity. Because as diversity grows, so must we. And so on behalf of our members, I urge the Senate committee to support AB 261. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 161, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Hello. For the record, my name is Carla Ramirez, KarlaRamirez. I am an organizer with Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada and a community member. Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada supports AB 261 because we understand the positive impact that a complete education can have on students as they learn about their country and those that have made it what it is today. Ensuring that these students in the state of Nevada receive a complete education, and one that includes the myriad of contributions of different groups, including Black, Indigenous, people of color, the LGBTQ plus community, and women have had on the history of the United States, should be the baseline. And too often, textbooks leave out the contributions and roles of marginalized groups in history. We look forward to living in a state that instead requires and uplifts a comprehensive understanding of American and world history. We urge you to support AB 261, and thank you to the Committee of Education for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. let's go to the next caller.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Okay, let's go to those in opposition. Anyone wishing to give testimony in opposition here in the room? No one's coming forward. So if we go online, if you could queue up the first caller.
If you would like to testify in opposition on AB261, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 504, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
My name is Brittany Sheehan, BrittanYSheehan. Like the student who spoke in the presentation, I am Hispanic, Caucasian, and the daughter of an immigrant. But unlike what we heard presented, my mother came from Cuba. There's an entire community of Cubans right here in Las Vegas. The history and plight of Cubans and how we became Americans will not be properly taught in schools under this law, because the truth of the inequities and horrible governance that brought us into this nation isn't currently politically popular to point out. Instead, what's popular to point out is Cuba's excellent literacy programs. There's no freedom of speech, no democratic presidential elections since the 1950s, no religious freedom, no economic rights, and no eating beef. I could go on. There's 6 decades of communist history the schools won't bother mentioning. The presenter told us the communities must be accurately portrayed, and she used the phrase Latino. Well, I'm not Latino, I'm Hispanic. Even the presenter seems to not know the difference between the words, which doesn't instill confidence. Another speaker called the student that presented biracial. Hispanic isn't even a race. It is baffling that this presenter used another sentence in closing, how close we are to internment camps. Internment camps, this innocent little bill we're talking about, is conjuring, conjecture on internment camps. This should display how political these educational standards are. Further, the bill reads the history and contributions of these selected groups, including LGBT. It says kindergartners under the law need to learn the history and contributions of LGBT people. This is inappropriate. I wouldn't talk to 5-year-old kids about any sexuality or preferences or how important a group of people with certain sexualities are. This isn't okay with many parents. The bill is designed to force politicized cultural concepts onto children. We plainly don't trust you to teach our children these things. This law is not needed and it is not wanted. Washoe School District just said they adopted anti-racism standards, so why does it need to be state law? It doesn't give more tools in the toolbox. It sets standards of what materials can be used based on checking off boxes of certain kinds of people, but definitely not Cubans like me. Please vote no on this politicized education bill.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 924, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Alida Benson, ALIDA BENSON, Political Director for the Nevada Republican Party. For years, Nevada has hovered at the bottom of education rankings, despite spending close to the median per student. By 8th grade, only 26% of our students are proficient in math. Only 29% are proficient in reading. Only in a Democrat-controlled legislature are those standards acceptable. Rather than address the poor allocation of funds and the lack of student choice for schools, there is a focus on revamping curriculum to quietly insert backdoor critical race theory into our schools that our parents have rejected. This bill allows boards of trustees to add curriculum on any other group of persons the Board of Trustees deems appropriate. Only a third of our kids can read, write, and do math at a minimum standard. Instead of increasing the accountability for teachers, the Assembly chose to pass AB261, which removed any standard for student performance on teacher evaluation. Our education system in Nevada is a hallmark of no accountability and low standards. Rather than add frivolous curriculum, why not focus on every student meeting grade level expectations and learning to read? Let's stop letting teachers' unions decide our policy. Engage parents, provide choice, and put our kids first. Finally, we would respectfully request that the members under litigation for a constitutional violation of the Separation of Powers Clause recuse themselves until the litigation is settled or they have fully resolved their violation of the Nevada Constitution.
Thank you for your time and vote no on AB 261.
Okay, let's go to the next caller.
Caller with the last three digits, 373, please